So welcome to the PRINCE2 pre-course videos, and this video is about tailoring and embedding PRINCE2. So generally we've seen PRINCE2 as a project management method, and of course the design of the method is that it can be used on any size or any type of project, and so therefore it's useful for us to think about how we might tailor it to suit your project environment, i.e. make it usable and you get the best benefits out of it with the minimum use of PRINCE2. We're going to look at two areas here, the tailoring, so this is what we do on the project, and then we'll go on to look at how we adopt and embed PRINCE2, if that's suitable, into your organisation. So what can we tailor on a PRINCE2 project? Well, there are a number of areas that we need to consider. Of course, we might be looking at each of the integrated elements, but one of the areas we can't tailor, and that is going to be the principles. So we are not going to be tailoring principles, but there are plenty of other areas which we can tailor. So firstly, processes. So we can tailor processes such as starting up a project and initiating a project. It might be that we could do both of those at the same time on a small project. This would allow us then, as we're planning, to assess whether or not the project is a viable, achievable and desirable project. We might want to tailor controlling a stage and managing product delivery, because the project manager doesn't have a number of teams, perhaps just has a couple of people working for the project manager, so therefore project manager combines controlling a stage and managing product delivery and takes over the role of being the team manager. So there's a couple of examples of how the processes might be tailored. When it comes to the themes, remember we have different themes such as business case or risks or issues or change, so it might be that we want to have a complex procedure or a simple procedure for managing risks and issues, for instance. So, are we going to do 100% or is it 50%? It just depends on what might be suitable for your project. Additionally, we might be looking to see whether or not there is a particular way in which you manage these things in your business. So for instance, there might be some kind of quality management system within your business which will have an influence on your quality management approach, or a way in which you manage risk in your business which then has an influence on your risk management approach. So it's always important to try and make sure they're aligned, but there might be more influence in certain circumstances. As far as the roles are concerned, it's perfectly possible to tailor some of our roles, and as you'll see later on, some roles can be combined. So for instance, the executive and the senior user could be combined because they're both from the customer side, and as long as one person looks after both of those areas, those interests, then that's acceptable, and on a smaller project that would be something to consider. We could combine project manager, team manager, as we've already mentioned. It's perfectly possible and right that the project assurance is carried out by project board because they are responsible for it overall. As far as management products are concerned, remember management products are the documents, so there's absolutely no reason why we can't tailor them as long as we have sufficient documentation for the project. So clearly we're still going to have a business case, but the business case on a small project will be quite simple. We will certainly need a project plan, but if the project's short, do we also need a stage plan? Perhaps the project stage plan become one. If we don't have teams and work packages, then we might not need team plans. We will of course need things like product descriptions, and we will need the reports, but again these will be less than on a larger project. As far as terminology is concerned, of course there are great advantages to everybody using the same terms, but we fully understand that other people may have other project management methods such as PMI or Agile working within their organisation, and they may wish to adopt a common set of terms across their organisation. Be careful, though, when we start working with other organisations, that we all understand what each of the words mean. And of course, in a project, you're generally going to have a glossary which will explain the terms that are needed to be used on the project. So that was a look at what can be tailored. And remember that in general, as a project manager, every time you come across a project, you're going to then look to see how much it needs to be tailored. Okay, and in this case, we see there will be a number of areas which you need to consider, and these will all be then translated into the project initiation documentation. You'll see, or may remember from the initiating a project process, one of the areas there is, this is how we consider we're going to tailor the project. So that's where we're going to record how we're going to do it. So there's certain situations we might find ourselves in for tailoring. So if we've got a simple project, then of course we're going to have a simple project board, no more than 2 stages, simple documentation, so we can really refine it down to the minimum necessary to be able to run the project, but still keep control. As far as an agile project is concerned, so whether it's the project itself or whether it's going to be elements of agile work going on inside a PRINCE2 project, that's fine, and we can adjust to take into account the needs of agile project management. If we're working with a customer, so an external customer to our business, then of course they may well be running the delivery of their products using a project. So you're a project within their project. And they will have a business case and a plan and risk registers, etc. So just be aware that you have them as well, and we need to work together to try to make sure that that works on the project. If there's multiple organisations, remember we may have to manage the organisation side of things. So what if we've got a number of senior users, because each of the departments in the organisation feel they need to contribute somebody to be a senior user. We may need to then use user groups, and 1 or 2 people come from that to sit on the project board. Similarly, on the supplier side, maybe we need to have a kind of prime contractor or something like that who manages all those many suppliers. If we're part of a program environment, then we would look to the program manager who will be then controlling the various projects, and we would look to align ourselves with all the processes and themes that they're using, which will be almost exactly the same as you have in a project. If we're going to be embedding a project, or sorry, the business adopting and then potentially embedding Prince into their organisation, then of course it's going to be the organisations deciding the level of embedding and how much PRINCE2 we're going to be using. That will then become part of their normal day-to-day processes. And also all those people who are likely to be involved in projects at any level, particularly the senior level, will need to understand what their roles are going to be. That doesn't mean to say, of course, that in each individual project, the project manager will again review, based on the organisation's view, how much the project will need to be tailored. So it's going to be a bit of a balance between the two, between the business and the project manager. If the organisation is going to adopt PRINCE2 as a project management method, remember that we should adopt it such that it gives us some benefit, so it improves the business performance. We will like to generally track this using some kind of maturity model. So level 1, for instance, this is kind of heroic efforts, everybody working really hard, but without any kind of structure. And then we work through 2, 3, 4, 5 until we have a refined way of managing projects within our organisation based on our experience. We need to make sure that our project life cycles are properly aligned to the way in which we're going to manage the projects, and that we use the tailoring rules and guidelines from the PRINCE2 manual or guidance that you'll receive. So this will give you some good guidelines to adopt PRINCE2. If we're going to then go ahead and embed, then we need to make sure that we understand where we are now. So what have we achieved so far? What do we want? Where do we want to be? So for instance, over the next couple of years, because it's likely to take that long, how do we see PRINCE2 being embedded in the organisation? And so we need to understand what that future state is going to be. We'll then look at what needs to change. That will give us then the work that needs to do, and therefore a plan. We need to consider how we're going to do that. Incrementally, this is generally the best way. Big bang is usually not very successful, but could be done. And by stealth, so slowly but surely changing things so that people don't realise, and then suddenly they're doing PRINCE2. Remember, of course, that it's not just the processes that we're going to be introducing. We need to make sure that people understand what they're going to be doing, so they'll need to be trained. Any systems that we're going to be using need to be compatible with PRINCE2, and people around projects need to understand what's changing and how they're going to be behaving toward the new way of working. We will need to make sure that everybody in the organisations understands what we're going to be doing, and if possible, demonstrate the successes as early as possible within this embedding procedure. So this has been a look at tailoring and embedding PRINCE2 into your organisation. Thank you very much.